A red glow rippling across a medieval canal. A bachelor party shuffling past a 700-year-old church. A woman behind a window running a business older than the city around her. Welcome to De Wallen, Amsterdam's Red Light District, the most famous one on Earth. For a quarter of a century, this little grid of alleys has been the world's boldest social experiment. What happens when a country stops banning the oldest profession and starts regulating it like any other job? But it isn't what it looks like on the postcard. Because the biggest threat to the red light district today isn't crime. It isn't a morality crusade. It's something much stranger. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why the Dutch were the first to legalize sex work, whether the experiment actually worked, and why the city that built the world's most famous red light district has spent 20 years trying to shrink it, move it, and pack it into a tower, only to watch that plan collapse in 2026. First, the basics. De Wallen, literally the walls, is the oldest part of Amsterdam, a knot of narrow alleys and two canals right next to Central Station. And here's the first irony. The beating heart of the district is the Oude Kerk, the Old Church, Amsterdam's oldest building. The oldest profession wrapped around the oldest church. Keep that image because it explains the entire Dutch approach, the sacred and the profane sharing one square for centuries. Why here? Because Amsterdam was a port. By the 1600s, the Dutch Golden Age, this was one of the busiest harbors in the world, and thousands of sailors came ashore looking for exactly what you think they were looking for. The authorities understood something simple. You can't make this disappear. So instead, they did something very Dutch. They tolerated it, contained it, and kept an eye on it. The Dutch even have a word for this, gedogen, officially illegal, deliberately permitted. The same pragmatic logic that would later give the world the cannabis coffee shop. When Napoleon's France swallowed the Netherlands, the trade was even formally regulated. Workers registered and medically checked all the way back in 1811. There were attempts at crackdowns. In 1911, the Netherlands formally banned brothels. And what happened? Almost nothing. The lights stayed on. A ban on paper, business as usual on the canal for nearly 90 years. Until October 2000. That's when the Netherlands did what almost no country had ever dared. It lifted the brothel ban entirely, becoming one of the first nations on Earth to fully legalize and regulate the sex industry. The reasoning was pure Dutch pragmatism. Drag the trade into the light and you can protect the workers, tax the income, and starve out the criminals. Brothels now need a municipal license. Workers must be adults, in Amsterdam at least 21, and sex workers became official entrepreneurs, registered at the Chamber of Commerce, filing tax returns like any plumber or florist. Yes, the Dutch tax office literally has a category for this. Sex workers pay income tax plus VAT on their services, and in 2007, it produced one of the strangest tax rulings in Dutch history. A judge decided that pole and strip performances count as art, qualifying them for the reduced cultural VAT rate, officially recognized as artists by court order. And yet full equality took decades. It wasn't until the end of 2023 that sex workers could reliably open a business bank account or take out insurance. Legal on paper, still treated differently at the counter. With legality came organization. The Netherlands has had sex worker advocacy since 1985, when the union De Rode Draad, the Red Thread, was founded. A former window worker, Mariska Major, opened the Prostitution Information Center in the heart of the district. Later came Proud, the national union for the industry, and Red Light United, representing the window workers themselves. And in 2007, on the square in front of that old church, a bronze statue appeared. Belle, a woman standing confidently in a doorframe. The inscription, "Respect sex workers all over the world." the first monument to sex workers anywhere on the planet. So what does this industry actually look like in numbers? Roughly 300 windows still glow in De Wallen. Estimates put the number of sex workers across the Netherlands around 20,000. The large majority of those in Amsterdam's windows are migrants, many from Eastern Europe. And the National Statistics Office has estimated the industry's turnover at around 650 million euros a year. Taxed, counted, on the books. So, promise kept? Transparency, safety, no more crime? Not quite. Here's where the experiment gets complicated. In 2007, a major police investigation, the Sneep case, uncovered a violent gang that had been forcing women to work behind licensed windows, in plain sight of the regulators. The case horrified the country because it shattered the core assumption of legalization, that legal automatically means clean. A license on the door, it turned out, says nothing about what's happening behind it. The city's answer was Project 1012, named after the district's postal code. Starting in 2007, Amsterdam began buying up window buildings and submitting them down. Around 126 windows closed, replaced by galleries, boutiques, and cafes. The official goal? Squeeze out trafficking and organized crime. The critics' verdict? It punished the legal workers instead of the criminals, pushed parts of the trade underground and online, and, in the words of advocates like Mayor, destroyed the trust between sex workers and the authorities. And then there are the drugs. Here's a distinction most tourists never grasp. The windows are fully legal. The coffee shops are merely tolerated. And the street dealers, selling everything else in the alleys, are flat out criminal. They, not the women in the windows, are the district's real menace. By 2023, the nuisance was so bad that Amsterdam introduced something unheard of: a ban on smoking cannabis on the street, in the one neighborhood the entire world associates with exactly that. Which brings us to the strangest twist of all. Step back for a second, because the thing currently overwhelming the Red Light District isn't vice, it's us. In 2025, Amsterdam, a city of roughly 900,000 people, recorded 23.7 million tourist overnight stays, a record, plus almost 22 million day trippers on top. That's despite an official cap of 20 million stays that the city set back in 2021. After 30,000 residents signed a petition begging for limits. The cap has been blown through every single year. And in 2026, residents actually took their own city to court over it. The city's defense? That the cap was an ambition, never an enforceable rule. Locals say it bluntly. It feels like living in a theme park. And a huge share of those visitors funnel straight through these few medieval alleys, to drink, to gawk, to point phone cameras where they're explicitly not allowed. So the city started fighting back. In 2020, guided tours past the windows were banned. Then came earlier closing times. Windows shut at 3 a.m. The district sealed off late at night. A freeze on new hotels. And in March 2023, the now legendary Stay Away campaign. Online ads aimed squarely at British men aged 18 to 35. Search for Stag Party Amsterdam or Pub Crawl Amsterdam, and the city would serve you a video of a tourist being handcuffed with one blunt message: stay away. Think about that. The world's most famous party district, running advertisements to repel its own customers. Which set up the final showdown. Mayor Femke Halsema's grand solution? Close 100 windows in De Wallen and move them into a purpose-built multi-story erotic center on the Europa Boulevard in the south of the city, opening around 2031. Her logic was striking. The prostitution itself, she argued, causes no nuisance. The gawkers do. The reaction? Almost everyone hated it. In December 2023, masked sex workers marched through the district with signs reading, "Support your neighborhood sex worker." In one survey by their union, 90% said they wanted to stay in Devalin, where the crowds, ironically, mean witnesses, and the windows come with alarm buttons and police seconds away. The new neighbors didn't want it either. Residents, schools, even the European Medicines Agency, suddenly 800 meters from a high-rise brothel, formally protested. And then the plan simply died. In December 2025, a key coalition party pulled its support, and the decision was shelved until after the elections. And in June 2026, Dutch media reported that Amsterdam's incoming city government is dropping the erotic center from its coalition agreement entirely. Years of fighting, studies, and protests, and the windows are staying exactly where they've been for 400 years. One last thing. In 2020, COVID did what 4 centuries of moral panic never could. It switched the lights off for months. The district survived that too. In the end, Devalin isn't really a story about sex. It's a story about the Dutch experiment, the bet that honesty regulates better than shame. 25 years in, the scorecard is genuinely mixed. Workers with tax numbers, a union, and a muzzin, but also trafficking scandals, shrinking windows, and a neighborhood being loved to death by 20+ million visitors a year. And it leaves the world with a question bigger than one district. If you build a place on tolerance, how do you survive becoming the planet's #1 attraction for it? That's the story of the Dutch Red Light District. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.